Welcome back to yet another interesting conversation at ETHRWorld Women Trailblazers. Allow me to invite Ruhie Pande, Chief Human Resource Officer at Godrej Housing Finance, for this session. Ruhie heads the Human Resources vertical at the Godrej Housing Finance. Prior to this, she was heading HR for Godrej Properties and was with them for 2.5 years. She, along with the MD, was instrumental in identifying and onboarding the CXO or the co-founder team, and now working on the key levers of the people strategy to enable a best-in-class financial institution. With a strong career graph spanning over 20 years, Ruhi has worked with some of the best companies in India across multiple sectors like financial services, real estate, fashion, information technology, and FMCG. Prior to joining Godrej Group, Ruhi was associated with many large organizations, including Marico, Kaya, Reliance Brands, NIIT, and ITC in various leadership roles. Ruhi has won several awards and received industry recognition throughout her career for her contribution in HR, including 100 Most Influential HR Leaders in India by CHRO Asia, 25 Most Talented HR Professional in Retail by Asia Retail Congress, and Leading Women in HR by IIGBI in the 4th Women Leader Awards in India. Welcome, Ruhi.
Thank you so much, Priya. Thank you for having me here. Look forward to the conversation.
Yeah. So I will start with my first question to you. In your position today, what do you see as the initial steps or the first step in the process of improving the hiring and retention of women?
Yeah, I think it all starts with the intent of having any kind of diversity. Diversity essentially means representation, and inclusion would mean how much they are involved. These people have a voice. So any effort towards improving diversity, in this case, we're talking about gender diversity, all starts with an intent. And those intents could vary, right? Some people might say that it's the nature of my business, I need more women. Some people may have some critical leaders saying, okay, this is my passion, and then it becomes like a personal agenda. In some cases, they may just say that I want to do this as a part of my contribution to society. But unless there is an intent, a very genuine intent, it'll just lead to window dressing and tokenism. Organizations will talk a lot. We celebrated Women's Day yesterday. I think it's kind of every year Women's Day is celebrated higher. But what is the on-ground impact still remains to be seen. Once the intent is done, in my opinion, there are 2-3 ways in which you can actually get a solid start. One is to make gender diversity or any kind of diversity you want to have in this organization an endeavor or a target or a goal of your leadership team, not just purely HR. If it remains to be an HR agenda, it will lead to a lot of tokenism, but not a lot of impact on ground. So how, some ways we can start it is by having conversations around this with the leadership team, making a case for why gender diversity is important, putting this on goal sheets of your top management team. So that's the first thing, involving your top leadership in it. The second thing which organizations can do is start by having gender diversity representation right from the top. So just a very small case in point, an example is when, fortunately in our case in Godrej Housing Finance, we got to start from scratch, and 50% of our leadership team is women representation. So that in itself creates a very good hook, as well as a very good signal for the organization that the company is serious. The third is that you've got to measure a lot of things, and specifically around recruitment. So, getting things like artificial intelligence, getting tools around digital means to get more women on, into your overall sourcing funnel, and having certain measures by which you can continue to track. If you suddenly get up one day and say, I want 25 to 30% hiring diversity from gender, it won't happen. So how do you build small milestones to say that, for example, I'll just give you some ways. You can say that in your leadership hiring, every time a final interview is getting done, between the two candidates, 50% have to be from gender diversity. So I would say these are 3-4 things in which you can start the journey.
Totally agree with your points made there that it starts from top. Definitely, it starts from top. So, with that, I will move on to my next question. What about the informal steps that can help companies motivate and develop female leaders? Please also highlight the role of mentors here.
Your question is very valid, Priya, because what you're asking me is how is it that when you say informality, how does that become a very fluid culture in the organization that women are empowered? So I think few ways to do it. One, to have a lot of informal conversations around it. The more people speak about their biases, the most people voice their opinions, the better it is. And the more formal sometimes you make these conversations, the more they become diktats. Your middle and top management, especially men and sometimes even women, will say yes as lip service, but actually not embrace truly the diversity and inclusion direction. So in my opinion, having small groups, discussions around biases, what works, what doesn't work, informal check-ins with women leaders, to see where things are going right, where things are going wrong. When you hire women, recognizing them, creating case studies around them, saying, okay, let me give you a small example. There is a very general notion that women may not be very conducive to functions like sales, technology, risk in our industry. So when you get women in and then you are able to highlight these case studies and say that these are role models which you create, informally it starts getting buy-in and the change starts happening. Last but not the least, one needs to have listening tools. So whether you do it through conversations with HR business partners, whether you do it through surveys, to constantly ensure that whatever you are sending out to the organization, you're also getting a feedback. So those would be certain steps which one can take. Your second very pertinent question, which you've just asked me, is around mentoring. I think mentoring plays a very important role, and I'll come to why. Before that, a very interesting statistic, I was reading a research paper, which actually says that men are 2 times more likely to get access to mentoring than women. Oftentimes, that's also because men may ask for mentoring far more frequently than women ask, or maybe that men have more informal channels, like we call them, right, the old boys network. So as I was saying, that they don't have, perhaps women don't have the access to the informal channels the way men would have, right? So when you look at this, along with the fact that mentoring is very critical to growth in any organization, you come to the importance of how you can create programs around mentoring. Personally, if you ask me, in my career journey, the role of mentors has been significant. So if you can create programs around getting mentors in for women in the organization, and these need to be formal. So if you can formalize a mechanism by which you can identify what are the areas where women need inputs on, match them with mentors in the organization who may be able to provide that input, it goes a very, very long way in building the capability of your women leaders, thereby ensuring that they don't hit the glass ceiling and continue to grow. So in many ways, it talks back to the culture. So it creates a very beautiful 360 loop. Now, there is another concept which has come out, and there's a lot of research papers written about it, which I personally actually believe on a lot. Now, when you look at mentoring, mentoring talks about senior leaders working with people to build their capability, to give them advice. There's another very strong concept called sponsorship. And I would stretch the argument to say not just mentors, women lead sponsors in the organization. The difference between a mentor and a sponsor is while a mentor will advise you, a sponsor actively participates in your career. The sponsor gives you opportunities for assignment. Sponsor takes bets on you. The sponsor actively enables your career journey. So I'm going to stretch the argument a little bit more, that when an organization is expressing this intent to say, I want women leaders, it's also good that if they can create this cohort of women leaders who are most likely to succeed, your high potential women, women in senior leadership, women in STEM, and say for this cohort, here are 3 sponsors who will provide opportunities, sponsorship, and visibility to these women. And then see the impact. The impact of sponsorship on women careers is far higher than just pure mentoring.
Yeah, I think so. This sponsor thing can be a game changer for the women leaders.
100% it can be.
Yeah. So with that, I would like to put up my last question. In the lines of this year's theme for International Women's Day on breaking the bias, how do you choose to break the bias?
Well, I think that is the $1,000,000 question, isn't it? Because as we look around us, and here I'm going to stretch the argument to beyond just the organization. Organizations are microcosms of the larger society. What we are really looking at every year when we do Women's Day is to create a change in the society. It starts sometimes with the organization, sometimes it starts with the government, sometimes it starts with the society. So how do we intend to break the bias? I would say there are many layers. I'll start with breaking the biases of organizations and leaders. So simple things like women, women who take career breaks will not be able to perform as effectively as their counterparts who have not taken a career break. Women who have had children perhaps don't have those level of ambitions which their male counterparts may have. Women are only good for certain functions and not good for other functions. So these are all biases we carry. And I think importantly, how do I plan to break it? The only way to break it is to first become conscious of your biases. So that's one. So a lot of conversations, candid conversations, discussions with the leadership about the biases. Number two, policies and programs. So even if biases exist, women have the agency to try and circumvent them. So sponsorship, I'll just give you a small example. One of the things we realize is that when women come back from career breaks, they're not able to travel because their children are small. So we launched a policy around the fact that if a woman is traveling, a caregiver is sponsored by the organization. So there is a bias, there is a lacune, there is a challenge, but we provide the women the agency to say that, okay, if you would like, here's a policy, right? That's number two. Number three, I would say, would be societal barriers. A lot of that will be to continuously have conversations with families of women and request or urge them to support women. A lot of that has happened with the digitalization, flexible working. Men have started anchoring a lot more chores. Yesterday, we were having conversations where I was very happy to hear a woman say that I tell my husband very clearly, next week I'm traveling, here's your responsibility. So how do we bring around a change, not just in the organization, but also get spouses to help them, get children to help women more, get them to participate in this change. And last but not the least, women themselves also carry a lot of biases, right? Women have a lot of limiting beliefs about themselves. Oftentimes women will feel that we don't need networking. We only have 10 hours and in which I'm going to use my time very efficiently. But what is to say that networking is not efficient? Women have a lot of limiting beliefs about how good they are. There's also a research paper which says that even if a man is 50% ready for a promotion, he'd put up his hand. Even if a woman is 100% ready for a promotion, they won't put up their hand. So what are these limiting beliefs? They're biases. So how is it that women can themselves be conscious of their own biases, be conscious of ensuring that they push themselves out of their comfort zone, put up their hands to say, I'd like this assignment, I'm happy to be mentored, take some risks. And last but not the least, don't be queen bees themselves. As women who are the recipients today, and I'm very fortunate to be living in this era, but when I did have my own personal leadership journey, we had a 3 months maternity leave, organizations which weren't very supportive. I had children early on, and I went through a lot. So when I look at the workplace today, it is always my endeavor to say that, how is it that we can make this far more conducive to women to continue to work, even post their maternity, and never lose out on their careers, right? So a big urge and shout out to women we keep saying that the old boys networks remain, but there's nothing stopping women from making their own networks and supporting other women. So don't be queen bees. And that's another bias. So those would be my few pointers there.
Thank you for a great conversation, Ruhie. It was a pleasure hosting you at the Women Trailblazers today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Priya, and wonderful catching up with you.
A big thank you to all the speakers who joined us at this event and to the audience who logged in to listen to the inspiring stories we feature at the ETHRWorld Women Trailblazers. Thank you and take care.